I don't know about you guys, but I feel every new Mercedes you and I have driven over the past year or so has looked like a spaceship. Now I get it, most of them were EVs, and to drive efficiency it has to look a certain way. However, do you remember in the olden times, when Mercedes was a design company that prized evolutionary changes? Well, apparently, that's back in style. As of late, I've been opening these episodes with the question, what is it? Meaning the vehicle that we are looking at. This case, I don't feel like I need to pose that question because you look at it and you immediately think, oh, that's a Mercedes GLC. But what you don't realize, it's an entirely new GLC. No, it's not a heavy refresh, and I can prove it to you. So the GLK, that came out in what, 2008, that was refreshed to the GLC in 2015, and if you go by the German calendar, they usually change cars every 7 years, maybe 8 years. What's today? 2023, enter an entirely new GLC. But here's the challenge in redesigning the GLC, my friend Stavros, or in reality his lovely wife, Missy. You see, Missy, she's great, but she's not a car guy. However, when they have a discussion of replacing her car, she says to Stavros, anything you want, as long as it's a GLC. And that is the reason why the GLC is one of the best-selling Mercedes, to the point where it pays the bills for the entire company while they go off and they develop the EQ line for electric cars and make all new all-wheel drive SLs. So it would stand to reason that if this is paying the bills for the R&D for everything else at the company, you really can't fool with the design that much. That's why you look at it and you immediately think, oh, that's a GLC. Even when I saw the car released, I'm looking at the pictures, I'm like, what the hell was changed? And that's where I realized the big design change here was making it look more mature while simultaneously retaining the look of the GLC. The trick they did to accomplish that was to slightly change some of the dimensions. The big ones are the same, but the length, they've changed it just a wee bit, and that really doesn't add to the drivability or change the packaging. It's to change the proportions of the vehicle, which in my eye changes the design to one that looks a little bit sharper. Then there are some detail changes like the front or the rear. The big change, however, is underneath the hood. There it still makes do with a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, but this now is electrified, meaning it's a 48-volt mild hybrid. What does that mean? It's got an integrated starter generator motor that sits between the engine and the transmission, and that does two things. Number one, that forms the basis of the electrical system, and number two, it provides some torque fill when the car is under load. Now that's all fine and good, but why is this important to the likes of the Missy and Stavroses of the world? Well, two reasons. Number one, efficiency. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, this is not trying to be a Prius, but still 23, 31, 26 combined for a Mercedes crossover. There's even a sailing mode where it can shut the engine off where the car is at speed to increase the efficiency. But then second and more importantly, the idea is to improve the overall reliability as the car gets older by making it less complex. You see, by having the integrated starter generator motor sit between the engine and the transmission and be the basis for the 48-volt mild hybrid system, there's less moving parts here, meaning there's no accessory drive. So this is something we've discussed in many Mercedes E53 episodes. Now, at the end of the day, this is still the most basic GLC, the GLC 300, so performance figures, not exactly that of an AMG, at least yet, 6.2 to 60, and VMAX 130 miles an hour. So it's electrified, not electric. Why is that important to us? Well, it's not 5,000 pounds. 4,277 pounds, or depending on express weights and measures, 1,940 kilograms. Now, huge point of information, that is about 100 pounds heavier than if it were rear-wheel drive only, with that sport mode. A little bit of delay there, but oh, no, it definitely wakes up. Oh, yeah. You definitely feel the torque fill. Wow, it's quite a difference from the last GLC 4-cylinder you and I have driven. Now, something fascinating about this, the transmission, it's the same 9-speed torque converter automatic that you and I have experienced in other Mercedes serial production Mercedes products. But this, like other Mercedes, it has different drive modes, and you and I are doing this in sport mode. Let's say for the sake of discussion we go down to comfort. Yeah, it robs us a little bit of acceleration, but not a huge difference. But the big thing you notice is if I want to change the gears manually, there are paddle shifts, you don't feel the gear shifts. It's imperceptible. It's like it should be in a luxury car, even though this is a tall, kind of shorter luxury car. But then if I switch this to sport mode, so let's go back to dynamic here. I'm back in sport mode. And now let's say I take over the shifting from the engineers and the computer command control. It's a very GM 80s reference there. I notice the shifts. This is something that they've added to this generation of GLC, where they've programmed in, I don't want to say it's quite to the level of like an R35 GTR and manual shifts, but I think what they've done here by design is to make it more sporty and make it more pronounced shifts. I have to say, it's not something that I would expect or ask for, but I kind of like it because it adds to the personality. So thankfully, the GLC remains a two-row crossover, which means I don't have to shoehorn my 6-foot frame where it don't belong. With that, let's get to the practicality. And this is where I, again, a 6-footer, would sit. And shockingly, there is a good amount of room behind myself, but more importantly, the hip point. That's where your butt hits the seat. And in this case, you don't feel like you're sitting on the floor. It's actually kind of high, which is good. Then there's the usual accoutrement of bits back here, meaning there's an armrest, there's a cup holder, vents, and then there's USB-C ports, so that's an interesting touch. Now this car is fitted with a pano roof, that's optional. However, all of them are fitted with a regular sunroof as standard. Then a bit of an aside, these, at least the folks that I know that own these things, most of their kids are at the point where their parents are no longer cool to them, so the kids don't want to spend time with their parents, like Missy and Stavros, so this is more of like an empty nester car. So perhaps I could enlist your help, because I'm having a problem with Stavros. He drives a very boring Audi, and I've been trying to get him to get a 911, so perhaps you could leave a comment in the comments below saying, Stavros, please, get your man card back and buy a 911. Now, back to practicality. Which brings us to the currency of a vehicle like this, and that would be storage capacity. Now, we talked about the extra length here, and the main benefit is on the design. However, there is one functional benefit, and that is 2.5 extra cubic feet of storage in the arse end of the car. Because the car you and I are driving is very well equipped, but it's also fitted with a larger 20-inch wheels. But in reality, these basic ones come fitted with 18-inch wheels as standard. And the reason why they do that is most people that buy something like this, they're going to prize ride quality over filling out the wheel wells, which these wheels do beautifully. But in terms of ride quality, you do notice the difference, but this is something that can be fixed. It can be addressed by just opting for the 18-inch wheels. And that in turn brings the discussion back to driving dynamics. And here, I would argue this is one of the big reasons why the GLC sells so well. It ain't just a mid-size or really kind of smaller crossover that's sort of affordable for folks that want something with a star and a laurel. I would argue the driving dynamics on this are unusually good. Like here, they've only improved it. This brings up a larger discussion. You and I have been driving the EQs a lot as of late because, frankly, that's what Brussels and Washington are pushing down our throat, as well as the car manufacturers. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why Mercedes wants to get away from this kind of driving dynamics, meaning this kind of control over the vehicle, this kind of ride quality, and have something so starkly different in the EQs. Like I've described many, many times, that the EQs, they drive closer to a Lexus, even in sport mode, where this, it reinforces the fact that this is von Stuttgart. This drives like a Mercedes over the past many years, and I would argue that's a good thing that really didn't need to change. And I'd go so far as to saying, how about we take a little bit of this and apply it to the EQs? Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the Options game with today's contestant, arguably the most important Mercedes-Benz that Mercedes makes, the GLC 300, for a base price of $49,100. Now that brings up the obvious question, how much was the previous generation in base price? That was $43,850. Now if this were two-wheel drive, meaning rear-wheel drive, it would be about $2,000 cheaper. With that, we have to add the color. That is selenite gray. We've seen this in a lot of Mercedes. Here, $750. I would go probably for a red or a blue on something like this and avoid paying for that. Then these are on offer in good, better, best strategy. They call it a standard, an exclusive, and a pinnacle trim. Now the standard comes fitted with bits like a power liftgate, a regular size sunroof, and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The exclusive adds things like the Burmester stereo system. Then there's this one. This is the fanciest one on offer. This is the pinnacle. It adds augmented navigation, head-up display, heat and noise insulated glass, then digital headlights. Now, why is this important? The digital headlights have a flash party trick, meaning they can project warning signs, like hazard signs, in the lights as you're driving the car down the road. So let's say, for the sake of discussion, there's a pedestrian in the road, the headlight can zero in on it. This is one of those instances of Mercedes-Benz being on the bleeding edge of technology that started with the S-Class and cascades down to the regular cars. Either way, this package is $4,450. Then we add the red and black leather interior, which does really work well with the selenite gray, $1,620. Then the natural grain black wood with the aluminum trim lines, that's an additional $200. Then we add the 20-inch AMG wheels that are black, $1,150. Then we add that panoramic sunroof we discussed, $1,500. The heated steering wheel, $250. Then something that I am shocked is optional on any Mercedes-Benz, a Sirius satellite radio. Yes, they throw in a couple of months for free, but really? $350? You need to change this. Then the advanced USB package, $300. The driver's assistance package, this is the level 2 autonomy. No, this is not a self-driving car, $1,950. The night package, that is the black trim throughout the car, $200. The AMG line. Now, a fascinating aspect about this package, it's not just the details in the front and the rear of the vehicle that change, it's also some of the upholstery on the inside, specifically on the top of the dash, top of the door panels. It's not leather, it looks and feels like leather, but it transforms the perception of the inside of the car, and I would argue because of that, it's well worth $33,450. Then the only other thing we pay extra for is the destination handling von Bremen, Deutschland, for $1,150, which brings us to a total retail price of $66,420. Like, look at the seat controller. It's the same metamorphic seat controller that they revolutionized the industry in 1979 for the 1980 model year. But instead of this moving, where you get feedback that you're actually doing something, this is stationary, so you really have to push against it for it to do anything. So it's like touch sensitive. This was not the right solution for this specific mission. Then moving further up the door panel, notice they changed the placement of the tweeter. Most car manufacturers put it at the base of the A-pillar. Here, it's at the base of the A-pillar, but it's on the top of the door panel in the front. Then something that overall stands out about this entire experience, and this is putting everything together, it's now a more refined experience. Like that power delivery we talked about earlier, it's more supple. It still feels like a 4-cylinder, but it's not buzzy because of the torque fill, because of the electrification. And that brings us to a very interesting point that this absolutely is the punctuation on. You and I have had the discussion about how politics from Brussels and Washington have impacted the car world. No, it's not me bringing up politics, it's politics coming into our world. Well, this is an instance where even a Neanderthal car guy like myself can see where electrification actually benefits the vehicle. We get all the benefits of electrification here and none of the grief of the extra weight or having to argue about infrastructure, grid, that kind of stuff. So this is a good interim step while we're working those issues out. So if Washington and Brussels could back off the speed at which they're pushing electrification, this is a great solution in the interim. Okay, so what have we learned today? Well, it's significantly more refined, and a big aspect about that is the way it delivers power is markedly better than the car it replaces. Then we layer on top of that the hope and promise of improved long-term reliability based on the mild hybrid system. And that in turn brings us to something that has not changed in any way, shape, or form, and that is the fact that this is still very much the gold standard in the segment which it occupies that all others need to be judged against, which brings us to the wish list. And here we already kind of discussed it. It needs to be more basic. It needs to be more utility. We don't need things to operate like a spaceship. So some of the controls and the UX on the inside, it is more important to change here than on the EQ side of the house. But I am one man, and this is the point of the episode that I turn around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, if you got value out of this episode, I would greatly appreciate you sharing them, clicking subscribe, notifications, and hitting the like button. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.